Hey, Michelle, what are we doing today?
Hey, Maddie. So today I thought we'd dig into something that could potentially have a big impact on a student's college application, and that is letters of recommendation or LORs as we call them. So I wanted to talk about today, like, how do you pick the best teacher to write your letter of recommendation? How do students make sure that all the good stuff about them is included in their letters? And there's also this article that just came out yesterday that I can't wait to hear your take on it, but it's why letters of recommendation for students of color are often shorter or less
Yeah,
enthusiastic. So we've got a lot to talk about.
it's aspect of college admissions that showcases just how complicated college admissions can really be. There's so many ways to go with it. So let's talk about it now.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a statistic out at you. The National Association for College Admissions Counseling, their data says 46% of colleges see LORs as moderately important. 15% say they matter a lot. So, what's the Maddie take on
That
this?
was
How important
that
are
was the
they?
one chart I was going to dig up for. I was like, is basically like the common data set type material. I was like, and yes, if you go look, you'll find learning recommendations as probably somewhere between like moderately important, the 3 out of 5 to like 5 out of 5. Probably mostly threes and fours out of 5. I was thinking like the stats, like the stats is like 100% of my students who ask about LOR work, I refer to you now because
Yeah.
yeah. What's the over? There's a lot of ways. Basically, what's your first question? I guess regarding LORs, like what are they or how important are they? Because
I mean, okay. So, how should students first decide how important they are? Do they need to go to the common data
let's
set?
talk about LORs, like what I think they mean and like what the picture, and then we'll go into like what do you do, because those are the two different
Yeah.
conversations. Letters of recommendation are important. I guess if you want the answer, they are. I think a 4 out of 5 is probably a good analysis of it. Whereas if your
Okay.
GPA is a 5 out of 5, and I like to think essays are 5 out of 5, but are also probably 4 out of 5. Okay, in this scenario, essays can be 4 out of 5. LRs are 3 out of 5. How about that? Like I put it in the middle of that in this
Okay.
regard, which is still important. Like I'm not saying that LRs do not matter much less because they are some magical thing where schools are really. Here's what LORs are for, my theory. It's complicated. There's a reason I dish this off to you to
Yeah.
do, because the LORs do and they don't matter in certain ways. All right, so here's what I'm thinking with an LOR, I suppose, is that they matter because I believe this is what I tell students. An LOR, what they really are, is a form of fact checking.
Uh-huh.
My take on it is less that they are reading these LORs and they are going to be like, "Oh yes, this physics teacher loves this child." Like that, like it is much more that in your application, students write about themselves and they have a series of extracurriculars that they then describe. And well, a goal of an application is to present yourself in a certain way. You know, like package is like
Right.
seen as overstated. Like I don't know, like that's what you do. Like when you have 1,000 words to write about yourself and all stuff, you have to package all that information. It's like it's applying for anything. And in these schools, they want, especially when it comes to the extracurricular, is like they want to believe, but it could do a little bit of fact checking. But what's even harder, they
Mhm.
also don't. So that, imagine how much even harder it is to fact check what you're writing about. There is no way, even if you have the resource to do it, like really fact check the personality or traits or passion of the student that's applying. And in an ultra competitive
Yeah.
environment, like we've worked with them. Part of our job as students is like making them sound passionate often about things that they merely just did. Like it's part of the system. Well, how do you fact check that? Like that's what seems
Yeah.
impossible. Well, that's what I think of whenever LORs come up. Is they're included in every application, and they usually come at the end of them. And the example I always make is that if you fill out a Common App application, which you come off as this big boisterous, like with cheerleader type, you're so excited about everything you do, and you leave bunch of clothes. And then the first LOR is like, Amanda is very studious. She's
Mhm.
always on time.
Exactly.
She's always early for class, and she loves staying after too. Even if that stuff is positive and the teacher is genuine, that I think could be really, 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 really bad. I think that is the easy,
Okay.
because I give teachers enough credit. Basically, it's a little tricky for me because I don't actually get to read actual LORs too often because they are
Right.
hidden in the background. What I have read are a fair number, because it's often international students or students who just go to like weird high schools that don't have the infrastructure of how these are actually supposed to go down. In
Mhm.
which case, the teacher tends to just hand it to them, like, "Okay, here you go, do what you want with it." And then, like, as I want to do, I'm like, "Let me look at it." And well, they're always very nice. I don't know, like I've never
Yeah.
I probably I don't care that much because I look at them and they're always pretty samey, I guess, but they're always, like, very, very flattering in a way that if I were admissions radar, like, this certainly wouldn't really impact my decision either way. But the part that I do
Okay.
like is reading them and noticing that it comes off similarly. And this is the weird meta part. the reason I don't worry about like this whole fact checking thing is when we're working with students, it is not that we're presenting their like true selves. Honestly, that's not what I'm thinking. At least it's also not that we're like presenting like the best version of them. That's not quite it. I figured out what it is.
Mhm.
What I'm helping students go with, and I want to go with, like for like what presenting is the version of them that I like, in particular, and that means
Okay.
that I, as a educated, passionate, like knowledgeable academic teacher type, who spent a lot of time with them and does like them. Why do I like them? Like, why do they seem special, and why do they seem especially suited for like a continuing path in education in a way that makes sense to me? That is then generally the type of theming and thought process I tend to help them with, and it's natural because like, okay, cool, it is a version of them, you know. Well, it's also on the back end. I think it tends to stand that other academic, educational people who do like them and spend time enough with them are going to well like them, but also like similar things that I like about them, and
Mhm.
thus will come out in
That
their
makes
writing.
sense.
That's where it pairs up, and these are all speeches I give to students that used to be as an explanation of why I don't want to help them fill out their stupid brag sheet. Now there comes with that, and it goes to you. But here's why LOR. That's my version of what LORs kind of are for, my guess. But that's what's also true is LORs matter. They matter more than I think they probably should. I don't like LORs. We'll get to like if they're a good idea or not. With the like different students get different LORs kind of thing. We'll get to that. LORs
Mhm.
matter because something has to matter in this process. And this was kind of my rant when there's test optional and people thought it was actually going to like impact. I was like, damn, if I worked in schools, I would hate test optional because they're taking what is already well, the problem with college admissions that makes I think the top 20 land so insane and people like us like viable is that there is a glass ceiling grades, stats in particular. There is a ceiling to
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily like inflation or not. As the example that you can be in the same science class as some other kid, and you can be the most diligent, brilliant scientist who works so hard in that class, and this kid's like kind of a d bag and just whatever. He gets a 93, you get a 100. It doesn't when you both apply to college, you have the exact same. That class was worth the same to you two. There
Yeah.
is a hard cap to especially grades, but also like test scores to a limit. And schools don't want it to be like 1600, so it's more like 15, 20. Like that is the cap, but you don't get extra bonus points for it. If only
Mhm.
because it's like, but GPA in particular, and that's how you suddenly end up with a multitude of students who have the max. They have the cap essentially in these weighted categories, these numerical categories, which makes it all not matter. And don't get that confused with just like you can get into Harvard with a 3.6, like the other guy on TikTok says. No, like that's ridiculous. Instead, they don't matter because well, they don't matter for you because you're just one of like the schools can't. They still have too many students applying when they sort for that. They
Yeah.
do sort for that. If you don't have that, you also very don't get in. But that is, and the further you go up, you get basically. There's a lot of kids would have like these max stats, and they have all the APs and all the like I guess the quantifiable parts are jammed to the gills. So we cut all the kids who don't have those. We still have way too many kids. So now what do we do as an elite school? Well, we can let in students that are hooked, like athletes. We want them, so they get in wherever,
Okay.
I guess. Well, okay, now what? Well, yeah, SAT used to be another one, but it's still basically the same problem as grades. Whereas once upon a time, like test optionals, like we can't use that anymore. Okay, well
Yeah.
let's just throw it to SAT out. You can't use that anymore. Well, now what do you have? Well, you have extracurriculars, you have essays, and you have letters of recommendation. And
Mhm.
that's pretty much it, right? Like that's what you actually get.
Right.
I don't think interviews matter. Like there's no interview episode this season because interviews are dumb. They don't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the other yeah, like interviews, yeah. That's what but and it's fun to throw away interviews because students will believe me because it's true. But like LORs are like the least important thing in an application that still does matter some amount, and that's like how
Yeah.
much, and probably more than it should because that is literally like those options I threw out. That is what these schools actually get of your high school career. Like they have to make very difficult judgment calls about it. However, I still go back to it really can't be that important just because I've read LORs. They're boring and generic, and they all say very nice
I
things.
know.
And if they
Yeah.
weren't,
Yeah.
they're all boring. They're all generic. They all are extremely positive, and it's impossible for me to believe that any students that these schools want is being kicked out or dumped because of the LOR that was not shiny enough. And if I was working, I
Mhm.
go back. Well, yeah, I do want to talk about it. It's like I would not like LORs if I worked in the college side either. I would not think it's very equitable of me to talk about all these glowing from very specific area code slash schools, and then yeah, like there are other students that this is kind of rough, I guess. Well, why do you think that is? Like, well, there's an external aspect to it. And this is getting into a further point. The why I don't like them on a personal level. I think they're kind of gross, and
Mhm.
also they fucking as an aspiring I didn't say as an
Uh-oh.
aspire. This is our third episode today. I get cranky when I haven't eaten as much. This is our third. This is our third. As an aspiring, English teacher once upon a time, the amount of extra like busy work and like teachers must hate LOIs. They're so annoying. Like, wouldn't you hate it? Like, and like you just want to
I
use
know.
ChatGPT. I'm sure a bunch of them are this, but that is my basic take on them. Is they do matter for the reasons I have listed, and whether they should or not, I guess we can get into. But yeah, they do matter, certainly enough that I once upon a time had to sit there and spend time doing like brag sheet stuff, but also now let's get into the how, I guess. Or you can answer your next question because the how
Yeah,
involves a
well,
little
you
bit easier.
kind of you allude a little bit to bias because you said like the coming from like a fancy school, you might have like, these teachers who have time to do these letters.
Let's
So
cover
I
this now and then we can talk about how after the second half, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So there was an interesting article that came out yesterday from Inside Higher Ed where they did like they kind of showed that recommendation letters for students of color, especially if they're from public schools, are often shorter and they're less detailed. Now we can kind of see that because yeah, the public school counselors, they could have like 500 or 1,000 students, which is going to be a recipe for generic letters. But is there something more to that, do you think? Why are they writing less for some of these students? Is there
Well,
like a
it's
hidden
it's
bias here?
I imagine it's supply and demand. I went to a very elite, private, quite expensive high school in the Bay Area, and I bet my LORs were great. And I was able to find the teachers I wanted, and
Mhm.
I had a hour-long conversation with both of them about what we could do, and they were really cool about it. And well, I don't think that's very. I don't think you can do that in like a 1,400 student high school.
Right.
Everything I just want to talk about, like LORs, what they mean. This is only applies in that top 20, top 25 type arms race insanity, specifically because so many factors equal out and then don't matter. Conveniently, LORs in theory should I think they matter less and less the further you go down the difficulty curve of college admissions, if only because
Okay.
they must. Because my big take on college admissions is that it's only in the top 25 range that things get insanely difficult very quickly. Before then, it's very much a matter of do you have a higher GPA and or test scores than their freshman class average, and if you
Mhm.
do, it is in every literally every data chart or piece of data I've ever consumed from any source very much confirms my belief on this, including my own results with actual students. Yeah, you just get in. I don't think they read them. I wouldn't, if I worked at like
Yeah.
Tulane, why would you read the level one? It's a waste of time. Like, does the kid have our average GPA is a 3.74? Our priorities like they wanted to get up to a 3.79 by next year. This kid has a 3.86. Seems all right. Didn't write anything stupid. Chunk, like that's how you get into college for the math of this game.
Right.
And we spent the last 30 40ish episodes basically like talking about all the insanity. It just doesn't apply this, and I think that includes LORs. I think if you are yeah, if you are but why? Yeah, like, why do you think? Because, like, not all high schools are created equal, and it is same reason
Mhm.
that if I was an English teacher, I wouldn't wanna do this already, and I get asked a lot because I'm, like, a nice yeah, like this will get into the how, like, don't fall for the trap of who to ask, because I would be asked them all the time because I would be, like, the fun English teacher, and I would hate doing it because, like, bro, I write for money already, like, why am I writing this? Like, I teach it, like, why am I now writing about you for Duke? That's to get to the
Do you
how.
think do you think colleges penalize students who come from like the large publics if they have like a vague letter that doesn't have a lot of
I
substance?
have no idea, and quite honestly, I feel like a lot of these are now being replaced by ChatGPT. I bet there's so many ChatGPT LORs going out
Mhm.
these days. This one is difficult for me to know because I have never worked in an admissions reader. If I was an admissions reader, I would not value LORs very highly for a lot of different reasons,
Mm.
and uh, I'm sure I'd be trained just like anyone. They'd be trained to say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, it's the actual admissions reader, their judgment call, and like if they don't bring up the LOR and its students why they like them or not, no one's going to ask any questions. So I know personally, I would look at it and make sure there was nothing insane about it, but it would probably be a lot of very same generic, very positive messages that
Yeah.
I would hopefully seem like, yeah, this is the same kid. That's cool. And I would hope that at least the stuff that the teacher was talking about is like stuff that the students also talking about. Like, okay, yeah, like it
Mhm.
matches. But then I'd mostly ignore it for the stuff I find more interesting or the student actually did on their own. And it seems pretty reasonable to me. That's how a lot of admissions people are going to do. They have like 8 minutes for these. I don't think the LORs are being read at nearly the same level as the essays are because so they're kind of different.
Right.
If an LOR was very short or lousy or obviously ChatGPT, I would go, "Okay," and I would just completely ignore it, is my personal take on it.
Okay.
I know me, where what happens if I catch something where if I'm reading between the lines of an LOR, this teacher from thousands of miles away is trying to tell me something by, like, writer code, that's a real problem for that student because I find that fascinating, and I like that gets in my head, but that's very different than, like, the problems we're seeing. I guess I can't tell you, and the fact that this never boils how about this? This never boils over, and, like, there's nobody ever screaming in the streets about LORs are unjust or anything like that, we need to fix it, is because they don't matter that much. Like, that's probably my best
Mm,
take.
mhm.
Test scores super mattered, they still do, and that was why they, like, a very similar equity debate, which I think is honestly more nuanced than this one. Yeah, it's not fair. If you go to a poor, crappy high school, like, you don't get it's nearly the same quality level. Like, that your application is
Yeah.
worse specifically because of where you went to high school in a way that is simply not true for a lot of other aspects of this, that people have spent much more time and energy attacking the including essays, including the work kind of work we do, or extracurricular stuff, the work
Yeah.
we do. We don't do LOR stuff very much because no one ever seems that upset about that this really broken system is still in here. Which is why it is
Mhm.
difficult for me to then say that like it's super matters, students. You got to nail this one. However, because I can't say it's not like interviews. Interviews don't matter. They're not by even by the admissions office. They're by like this is a little mini interview thing. It's like they're by the marketing team or like the alumni division, not the admissions
Yes,
division, because they're
yes.
trying to have people feel like they're important because they got to interview for their school, so they'll get more money. That's why interviews exist. These is part of the process. They get these. You know, like they're actually in the file, and
Mhm.
I guarantee you, every year there are many students. One reason or another that I could not like they do or don't get in because of an LOR. Like it totally happens. But those are fringe cases in a way that
Okay.
I don't spend very much time worrying about it, and I feel much better having being able to send people off to you because you tell me like what do students think about LORs? They really do. Like the students are very nervous about LORs and they want
I
help
was
with
just gonna
them
say they're very nervous.
in a way that I very much met a lady who's better at this kind of thing, and during my very busy UC season can handle it. Yeah, like what do they think about it? Because I basically give them a little speech that I'm going to give on the podcast about how to do it, and then hand them off to you. But when you meet these students, well, let's do the full process. It's 2 weeks into the year, and a little Zoomer. We're in the middle of the second UCSA, and I'm starting to cook. And they're like, and I go, okay, so that's good for next week. And they go, oh, Mattie, I go, what thing? I go, yeah. So what would you like? And you go, so there's a letters of recommendation there too.
Oh
And I go, oh,
gosh.
Christ, Michelle will do it. But then the speech I give them, and I basically cut them off, and I go, okay. So a couple things. One, is there give you a brag sheet or anything like that? And they usually go, mm-hmm. And then
Mhm.
or they go on some tangent about not knowing who to ask.
I was just gonna ask you
Right.
about
Okay.
that,
So
yes.
I'm gonna tip. This is what I do in these scenarios, and then I'll hand them off to you, and you tell me because I'm out of the picture at this point. I usually let them go on their insane like teen drama filled tirade regarding who they should ask and why the entire time sitting there basically and being like I'm supposed to be on my break playing Street Fighter right now. This is what I signed up for, another year of the Zoomer. Only for at the end, I generally tell them the spin speed and then modify what they should do. When you're picking teachers, I recommend that students pick 2 teachers, one STEM, one not STEM is usually, or one in the same kind of realm, as close to your future major as possible, and then one other, honestly. So if you're applying computer science, you really want to get a LOR from a computer science type teacher or program master. If you're applying liberal arts, if you're applying history or something like that, an English teacher might do, but you really want like a history teacher or whatever that might entail. Like the closer you can get, the better.
Yeah.
The other is a lot more flexible. So this is often when students there's like a band teacher. I believe my debate coach wrote a second LOR for me. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like this. I kind of like those. I think they're charming in a way that you can get away with, and they will. I'm sure they will like you. You want to have two. The only students who have three is for something weird about Caltech that I don't remember. Caltech you need
Yes.
three, and you maybe like this to you. But every other school you
Because yes, because STEM, for the STEM teacher, they don't consider computer science
this
or
is why I say
something.
ask Michelle
Yeah.
about Caltech. She'll know. Um, I then say, okay, so usually the student, then one of the two teachers, they are all set. They're like, great. The other, I say, okay, so what you really want, the teacher who is matching your major, you want to specifically ask them or instruct them in the brag sheet that Michelle will help you with. Two, you want them talking about you as say, a programmer, as a student, a learner of of the topic they teach. So you want them emphasizing your aptitude for the subject matter, how you applied it, how they've impressed you with what you've made, and that's where you get a lot of good stuff in. But it's very much about you as the academic, the student. Your other, that is about you as a person. And that gets the other half is it doesn't matter if you're applying computer science, your teacher, it doesn't matter how good you are at learning history because it's not relevant to your application. Instead, you are trying to just buffer some of yeah, and that's what you can approach them with or talk about or the brag sheet that you help out a lot. That you're a team
Mhm.
you're a good teammate and you're always working for other people. That even when you don't know something, like it's important for you to make sure that you do the research on your own time to like make like soft skills almost, like more generalized understanding of you as a person. And then the students always go, "Oh, okay." And I go, "Great. So Michelle is going to be seeing you next week about this." Because that's where but yeah, that is my overall advice of how you pick teachers. And then if I want to get fancy, is do especially for the academic one is the most important. It should be someone who's really close to like the actual work you've done or knows the most about it. Also, this is just for a bonus. Do not fall for the trap of picking the teacher that everyone wants to pick. And I say
Yes.
that as I would be that teacher at your average American high school. I would be the wacky, friendly English teacher who's a writing guy, and it would not be I would not be the best person to pick because I would not have the time or energy or really like turns out your average English teacher doesn't want to write a bunch of other more stuff, you know?
Yes.
It's like if you had to play if your teacher had to do like math problems. You're like, my calculus professor would love this. Like on his time off, he can instead be doing more math just for
Right.
help me. Um,
Actually, that brings up an interesting question because there are some students where they're like, this teacher knows me the best, but I
yeah.
know that their rec letters aren't that good. So, what do they do in that situation?
It's a little bit of use your judgment. It was this and interviews. I once wrote pieces that were like much more in depth and like almost turning like social manipulation type stuff. I think, but like it's not even good advice. It doesn't matter that much. You know, it's like I don't give these letters enough credit to be like, well, you know, you got to metagame, you got to manipulate your teacher this way, and like no, instead you direct them, you can steer them, and I guess
Hmm.
what I was if they were really fancy, like, well, you now understand the purpose, and that's probably the most helpful for students. You understand like what the goals of these would be, and I think the goal makes a lot of sense. I also give a speech about it's about kind of background checking what you're already producing, right? So it's like
Yes.
done correct, and that's what can often be difficult. And why I like so much you helping them is like at its best, your letter recommendations should be very similar in content and quality or content and theme and everything to what you were doing in your own essays. To the point
Hmm.
that one of the bits like you say is like the hardest part about doing brag sheets is I didn't know how to direct students to make sure the teacher talked about the same stuff because I didn't know what it was yet. Have you had that experience with students?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yes.
so now it is now I've now been 13 of my 15 minutes that I was gonna eat food and play Street Fighter are now gone. I have another student in 2 minutes. I go, okay, so Michelle, you're gonna meet Michelle. Well, I'm gonna meet Michelle about it, and they go, okay. Then they meet you. What happens with you?
So, yeah, I firmly believe so much and agree with you that what the letter of recommendation does is it lends credibility to the application. So we focus a lot on that to, which teacher knows about your extracurriculars so that you can make sure that that teacher kind of talks about those kind of things and, adds that background checking like you're talking about. Also talking about there in the brag sheet, there's all kinds of questions. So we just go through, what have you learned in the class? What kind of topics or subjects were interesting to you? Or a lot of what I'll ask the students is where is somewhere where you were challenged and you had growth? Because I think teachers really want to talk about that. So that's a lot of what we spend our time
Yeah, it
doing.
ends up
And also like making sure that the teachers aren't repeating things. So trying to put different aspects of the student into the different brag sheets.
yes, I think probably the most helpful part is that distinction because that's what I've came up with pretty early. The distinction between you as as a academic and students. That's the one thing they go, ah, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I think that distinction will help clarify a lot of smaller issues within the process. If you understand what the goals are, it's easier to use to then base like further decisions on that. Your average brag sheet, like what kind of questions are they asking? You find because usually yeah, it's they're not that dissimilar to college admissions questions, right? It's like how have you yeah like can you remember some ones?
Yeah, like think about your favorite topic in class or what was something that challenged you, or that what was something that you had to overcome, things
Yeah,
like that.
I in general, your answers should be very similar, if not copy and pasted from like what your essay's about. You know, like that's what they're basically asking for. And I think probably the one bit of advice is how do you help student? The one that is you want to make this process as easy and effective as possible for your teachers within these brag sheets, so that they may write good stuff on your behalf as easily as possible. How do you help students do that? Like, what kind of things are you making sure so that the actual teacher does a good job, or it's as likely to happen as possible?
Right, like don't send your whole resume if that's not what they asked for. Give them like short explanations with bullet points and not like these huge narratives. Make sure that you are clear about the different topics and things like that. So, and also explain like I demonstrated leadership when I such and such. So
Yeah,
you're
I
spelling it all out for
when
them.
it specifically when it, like I you want to make it so that they can copy and paste over like sentences from you. Like that's probably the best. That is the goal of it. Is yeah. Is like I And it's you can basically which kind of feels weird writing it to a teacher about here's what I did, but it's a brag sheet. Like they give it a name like that. And don't be afraid to simply write sense like here are some things I accomplished. You can be very, very upfront with like here are some things I accomplished in your class that I a line of low is like I know that I'll be writing about and I think it'll be really helpful if you cover this as well. And you'd be like, yeah, like my first place at the state Stanford competition, is like and how I was and
Right.
how we worked together after class to do it. Like those kind of bullet points work super well because you were just playing as like the teacher most of the time they want you to get into college, like they're on your side. That is why they're just
Mhm.
tired and they don't want to do there's a billion of these. So that is why the more they can copy and paste over things, that is yeah, like you make it very easy to copy and paste over, they will, and then that stuff is now in your letter of recommendation one way or another. Like those little things like that. How
Exactly.
long does this process usually take to do a brag sheet? Because I my problem was that this is all very similar to writing like applying to college and doing essay work, which is why I it's just a much less impactful version of it. I'm having like
Yeah, it can take a whole meeting usually.
yeah, but I think the process is somewhat similar. That really you do an outline with them, and then they bring stuff back and look at it.
Right.
Then they don't bring it up again, which is why I know you crushed it. Like that. Now we're back in my land, and usually one of like the 9, 10 students will still be like, and then I basically is often a very odd niche case slash someone who. A student who just needs a little bit more pat on the head and be okay kind of thing. But the rest of the students, they these LORs they don't seem to amount to much, and that's like as I said, I guarantee there's been some scenario in some one of my years with some number of students that they did or didn't get into schools that they did because of their LORs. They had like a bad LOR for whatever reason they didn't get in, or a really good one that. And I'm not privy to any of this. However, it's hard for me to believe it's very common because it just hasn't matched my perception of these results. They tend to make sense, and when they don't, it's because I did something went wrong that was more say yeah like it wasn't the student last year who was like being considered an international. It wasn't the LORs. It never was. Like when things are not going the way I expected, I never go like it
Mhm.
was the letters of recommendation that are no, and it never has been.
What about, I guess, students who might be listening who think like, well, I don't really know a teacher that well. I don't have like I haven't really developed a relationship with them. What advice do you have for them?
Don't know you that well because again, it goes back to I guess the goal of the letter of recommendation. That it's attached to like these are fact checking. Like I think a good letter of
Right.
recommendation, a successful one, certainly. I'm not the guy who's like it's about the perfect LORs, how you get into Stanford. No, I'm the opposite of that. Is I definitely you definitely don't want like I think even like the right kind of crappy one isn't that big a deal. Like the only one you don't want is some teacher who's going to. I once had a teacher. It'd be like, hey, I don't. This kid wants me to write their LOR, and I don't think they should because I don't think very highly of them. Like, and I don't want to lie. I was like, I was like, I was like, "You
Oh.
are playing with fire, sir, and I'm glad you brought this up. You need to tell that kid to go somewhere else, and you need to be polite about it." And the guy was like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Dude, do not mess around here. You could get this kid in trouble." Like, he's like, "You don't hate
Oh,
this person, right?" He
wow.
goes, "No, they just then you need to be you. If you, it's cool if you don't want to lie. You need to have like a friendly conversation where you steer him somewhere else because that is how it could go back. Like, quite honestly, a ChatGPT one or one that's like 3 sentences or has even typos in it, I don't think it's that big a deal. I think people are like, okay, whatever, bet school, whatever. It is one in which there's obviously a candor to it, and maybe
Mhm.
a varying obviousness that this kid is not all that in a bag of potato chips kind of thing. That kind of
Right.
hidden subtext, it can be poison because and like that's what I would notice and find intriguing. I'd be like, oh, well, what's this line about? So it's like more you want it's more
Okay.
you want your teachers to be careful and pick ones that are not gonna like backstab you, you
Yeah.
know. But yes, and I believe that that's best regimented by you should your brag sheet should be very thorough and it should be very easy to copy and paste and you don't have to do a lot of thinking because that is what you're trying to do. You're trying to control kind of the narrative in that way and like
Yeah.
steer it back to just be very similar to what you already want to be writing about and it should feel natural because it should be genuine to what you actually are interested in and what's relevant to this teacher. If you don't know them very much, if it's related to your major, I think that's okay because if as long as they were in the like if you write them about like please don't write me as a student, I think teachers probably know their student depends like maybe depends on the school, but a lot of teachers probably know better about you as a student than you might expect if you were in their class for a semester or a year. When it's about
Mhm.
someone who likes you, maybe that's when you consider you can be more creative than you might think with the second LOR. Like I think that one is it's not it's
Okay.
I don't even I wouldn't say it's more or less important. It's more that that's where you can be a lot more flexible. It doesn't have to be a teacher necessarily. If you had like a internship or like a research opportunity with a guy or a gal, like that's I think that's a very viable number two version. You don't want to have like 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, which is students like that's just a bad idea. But You can be a bit creative. I guess if it's the best you got for a lot of students do COVID and everything screwed everything up. There's all sorts of edge cases.
Yeah.
But I would stick to is the academic one. If it's for give the one that's best going to be able to and hopefully positively talk about you doing that doing that actual work. For the someone that's you probably do want someone who really does like you and will speak highly to you and maybe be a bit more creative about where you could go for that because it doesn't have to be just the teacher that maybe you could select like that. And I feel like every student, there's somebody involved with their, I guess, academic or young professional life that would do well. So that's probably where I would take those students.
And where's the line for like extra LORs? Like you've got the two from the teachers, let's say, but
The
maybe you've
thicker
got
the
one
file, the
from
thicker the student, Michelle. It's old school, but like the boomers got that one right on how they on what they say about extra LORs. I do not care for them, and if, like it's somewhat similar. I'm not a big fan of attaching anything to a college application that they not specifically ask for.
Okay.
Similarly, I tend to steer students away from submitting an art portfolio if they are not applying art. It's a similar thing as it's just I don't think it works very well. Like these are read very quickly, they're read very efficiently, and I don't think it plays well to send them. That's why like additional information is like such a like sensitive subject with us. It's like how do we use this box, which is part of
Yes.
the form to get more stuff in because I think that's kosher. It's only because it's part they've scrolled through all the pages and it looks like the other pages, it looks like everything else they've gotten. They expect I believe schools accept excuse me, accept Caltech for some reason, I don't remember. I feel strongly to very strongly that you should be submitting 2 letters of recommendation to every school that you apply to. My students certainly do, except for Caltech for some reason, although it might be 2, I don't remember, and it's kind of an exception that proves the rule kind of thing. The like if you do it my way, that only leaves room for 2, and the latter
Mhm.
is flexible enough in a way that you should just send the second one that you like the best, I guess. What you don't like the option is a third one I refer to as like a celebrity shot,
I was gonna
LOR,
that's
yeah.
my next
Yeah,
question.
celebrity shot
They're like, "But
LOR.
Mattie, I worked for like the senator
Celebrity shot
or,
LOR. It's yeah, it's
yes.
like you call them on the pong table. You got one in for you.
Yeah.
I call these out as celebrity shot LORs, and I cannot. I have been like, yeah, that can come in. That's kind of neat. Probably, but also we're talking about some of the most influential, powerful people on the planet here because we work with a very specific type of clientele that they're like, but we know
Mhm.
this guy. Well, that guy often has. Yeah, we'll find a way for that. We'll
Right.
figure that out. We'll figure that out.
So sometimes it's okay for that extra one if it's meaningful enough.
Sure, if the name itself and it's going to be very well done, what you don't want is like that one has to be good is the thing, like, and it really should be written by
Right.
them. I worry that that one it's why I say even, like, I say sure is like, I ask a lot of questions, like, is it going to be from, like, him or will it be from his staff
Mhm.
or from his assistant
Mm.
or her, there's that getting it's like getting an autograph or something, like, that can mean a lot of different things, I guess. I will have a lot of questions, although much, much, much more commonly, 90% of the time, I'm like, they Harvard doesn't give an S about that.
Yeah.
Like it's not impossible. It's not impossible. It's very, very difficult to impress your way into a top 20 school. How about that?
Okay. I was gonna say, could those ever like tip the scales?
I doubt it. It would depend. Like there's this range is very wide of both who this person is. Yes, Barack Obama. You should probably include in your. Like, that's what I keep thinking of.
Yeah.
And no, I did not. I did not land a student with a Barry go. And I particularly picked Barack Obama because that's the one person that powerful that also would have like, I don't know if we want to have this president helping you out. Like, yeah, it's complicated. If you really don't know, you probably don't. It's probably not worth it.
Okay.
They probably. It is not like a third LOR is going to like ruin your chances. However, it will. It's very rarely going to help you. It's not what they want, and it's more likely to annoy them. Especially, I guess the LOR. If it's a celebrity shot, they should be relevant enough that the person reading it at least understands why you did it. How about that?
Mhm.
And that is a
Okay.
yeah, and then often it's when like, "Wait, who's that?" And they have to explain who they are. I'm like, "I don't think like Stanford's not going to know who that is either." And like that is cool. I guess I would argue if it's like like if it's good, is this good enough or relevant enough? And does he know you well enough? Is he really going to do it to the point where that should just be your second LOR? Just send that one. Like and
Okay.
that's the
Okay.
case for the governor. Well, the governor's pretty cool. I don't know, but like yeah, for the state, it's a lot of politician stuff, but also yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the owner of this Fortune 500 country. Like that kind of range I
Yeah.
do see. And if it's really going to be by them and it's really going to be good and you really do care about this and you will be writing about whatever you were doing with them quite a bit.
Mhm.
Yes, but however, I likely think that should just be your second letter of recommendation. You could still go do the first one about your major. And even if they're
Okay.
right, so if you're applying history, you can just submit like a politician and also a history LOR. Like, screw the STEM stuff. No one cares.
What if a
Yeah, but
student does like
that would be my that yeah.
if they do research, let's say they're working with a professor at Yale, should they get an LOR so that they can make sure that that
Sure, that's
goes
the other
to
version. That's the
Yale?
other version of like a professor. Yeah, is
Right, right.
I will temper any expectations where I guess it's usually the same type of people. It's like there's some ace in the hole. Like they got this all in the bag, and
Yeah.
I will then kind of explain, usually yeah, there's like it doesn't. Yeah, like a Yale professor would be cool. Like you could have said that to Yale, but like it's just not how this process works, you know?
Yeah.
Is these schools, the way they actually select students and they actually build a class and the stuff we've gone over in so many of these episodes, they're trying to fill slots in their work and they make sure that, and they're really trying to find the most like accomplished who will most benefit from it. It's not like who gets who knows the professor. Like that stuff is,
Okay.
especially, and then on the ground level, people who actually are reading these and digging through them, if all that stuff you're risking, no one's gonna be impressed by you like any, like it's hard, I know how hard it is to impress me, and you've picked it up as well. It's hard to be it's hard to be impressive in this world. Like we're trying, like, the best of the best, trying to get to Harvard, every deal. So like
Mhm.
anything that you're saying, it's like they will be impressed by this. I think I think you'll be disappointed. This is not Barack Obama. Barack Obama gets in. Like, that'd be sick. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that, yeah, the head of Microsoft was like Steve Ballmer was where I went second. Like and because you worked underneath him, and like you're yeah, but also you're gonna get in because you were on like Barack Obama's like chief of staff team, or like like if
Yes.
you've
Right,
reached a
right.
level. How about this? If you've reached a level with a person I consider relevant enough in order to for this to like really work out, you likely have an application already that is very powerful and strong in the first place by the nature of you
Mhm.
getting close enough and having enough influence with someone who is a real big time like world time player that they are both ready, willing, and able to actually sit down and type out a thing saying that you were rad and they really appreciate your help and here's how. If you can get that done,
Yeah.
yeah, you should send that. But what you don't want to do is just stick it on the end, thinking that it'll move the needle. Well,
Okay. And then talk about like the UCs. Is that
yeah,
process
I don't
different?
think they take them. Yeah, yeah.
That's like, yeah, so they don't even take them at all. But do they
Unless
ever ask for them after the
no, never,
fact?
never, never, never. The UCs don't take them, and
Okay.
I believe a good number of state schools don't take them. I don't know the specifics because I don't look into it. It's like is that's why I
Mhm.
keep bringing up Caltech, because Caltech has some weird thing with them. Every other
The
school,
STEM teacher.
yeah, and that's why I also think, yeah, getting into 3, 4, 5 LORs and trying to like, because in theory you could be juggling them, like, well, then, I'm applying here. That is a level of metagaming that I do encourage and I do participate in quite heavily on like the SBA aspects. Part of the game. It's like, yeah, well, the Brown wants this, Yale wants this. It
Mhm.
just does not seem worth the mental energy or anything like that in order to try to play that game with LORs and be shuffling around. Like, you just find it goes back to like you have the two that really cover what your application should be about, and then done well, pretty much what you're writing about should cover that as well. Like, you academically and you as a person is a good way to address the two major aspects of a college application in the first place.
Right.
This is the type of relatively, this in interviews, like I get a little annoyed with them because this stuff takes a lot of time and energy, like whether it's you care about it or not, and that's
Yeah.
why it's true. Like well, I hired you specifically to work with on extracurricular sheets. Like, that was why I needed you, because that is a very different kind of time. I also think those are boring and suck at them, but like those super matter. Those super matter. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I went and got you specifically for that. But then we were able to move on to like what else is going to go down, and that's how we ended up. Like, soon after it was LORs, but it's much further down the list. Like, it is, they are important enough, and then you get into like then it's stuff that soon after the bottom drops out. It's like interviews don't matter. Like, what else do? Yeah, but this is kind of at the bottom of that, which is why it's hard for me to. The interview one would be much easier for me to just like whatever. This is all a joke and make fun of the process of why it happens. It's not the truth here. Like, it's a combination of I don't think it matters that much. There's a lot of, as we mentioned, a lot of like problems with the system itself that would I think makes it less reliable for these schools. And also,
Mhm.
well, you will never know, even by like college admissions, you will never know what happened because you don't even get to see the material you're sending in. At least with your grades and test scores, you know what you did, and with your essays, you wrote them, or you looked at them. You sent them in. It's just a black box, and this all goes like 10x for like counselor letters. Right? I don't even know how a counselor letter works because they don't come up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for final couple pieces of advice, I want to kind of talk to the professional writer here. If there's a teacher who happens to be tuning in, like what advice would you give them to
Sure.
write
Oh
like a
yeah, this is great. Yeah,
stronger or
absolutely,
more
absolutely.
impactful letter?
In fact, I don't think I ever end up finishing it, but the time I wrote about this, it was a letter to teachers specifically.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yes, I wanted to cover this a good amount because This is what probably the most important. Teachers. Well, as you hopefully you listened to this episode, I guess, and the part where I was talking about like, how students can help you, and that is saying is to give you core details. It's basically just strong writing, like core details and examples. Show don't tell, teachers. What you're gonna do is you're going to go read a bunch of you're gonna go listen to and read a bunch of colleges. Like write the letter of recommendation only you could write. If there were 1,000 other recommendations that fell into a pile and someone pulled it out, would they know it was yours? Like all that advice applies.
Oh, yes.
No, but
Oh
what it
my
is
gosh.
examples, specifics, examples, and well, is whether the student knows it or not. You having a conversation with the student, you can even guide them a little bit. It's like, so you ask me, it's like, so you're asking me, are you applying math? You know, like I'm a math teacher. It's like,
Mhm.
are you applying math? And the kid will probably go yes, or like no, but like physics. Okay, and then you'd be like, well, are you going to be like, it's like math important to you on this application? They'll almost certainly say yes because it should be subjective. Whereas if you know, like, if the kid's like, no, I'm applying liberal arts, you're like, okay, cool, right? But either way is especially with applying math, but even physics, you'd be like, are you going to write about like does math matter? Are you going to write about like math of physics kind of stuff? And the answer will be like kind of, sort of. I think you can slot yourself back into what I was explaining about. It's like it's probably going to benefit you the most if you like this kid, you want to help writing about them as the mathematician in this case, or as the
Mhm.
scientific mind or the STEM mind, and the way they've actually applied that work in your class. They're applying physics and like they don't mention math. It'll get across. That's how you're gonna be able to help them the most. If it's something completely unrelated to what you actually teach, then consider going much more into like the subject way, like the kid in general.
Yeah.
That should help clarify. You kind of separate kids pretty naturally about like what which and if you're not sure, you could just ask them or just guess. Like I don't know. Yeah, but then in the actual writing, examples are really good. And maybe if you want to do just a little bit of outlining or drafting, you don't have to worry so much about the. They just try to like if they provided you, that's very helpful. Like dig out the stuff they mentioned, and they mentioned their brag sheet. That's really what these you want to be including. As is honestly is like the stuff in the brag sheet, even if they don't give examples, and basically just whatever you can remember about the project, I guess, whatever they mentioned in their own brag sheet. And then it's like, yeah, anything you remember that you remember thinking was particularly neat or showed a little bit of character beyond what you might expect and like what you liked about that.
Mhm.
And it honestly, I think an effective brag sheet would just be you go through their, whatever sheet, just paste in all the stuff they want you to do, and then write one or two sentences. Like you could really just put it colon. Like here are some of the things I remember about.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, this is fun. I should draft one. Like yeah, it was like I worked with X and Y like this period. Here are some aspects of their. This is spicy. Here's some memories I have of them and the work they've done and why I appreciate it. And then you could just paste in basically what the stuff they want, colon, and then just
Oh,
write a couple
yeah.
write a couple sentences about like what you remember about it and why you thought it was kind of neat. And if
Mhm.
they're matching your major, really try to make sure you include like the principles they were using or understanding of it. If it's the kind of the opposite part, liberal arts, then you can just talk about like they did a good job of presentation. They were cool in front of class. Everyone thought it was fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
You do not need to spend much time worrying about like the artistic nature of these things. How about that? Like, please do not like if you're a
That's a
math
good
teacher, if you're
tip,
not a great
yeah.
writer, like please do not get burned out and trying to like sound like a great writer. You can be very to the point. What these schools are looking for is a lot like information obvious and consideration that obviously you care. And what they're really looking for is background checking that the student actually completed the stuff they're talking about and that you thought it was neat too, and hopefully a somewhat similar way that they described it.
That's awesome. And for students right now who are like rising seniors and maybe they haven't gotten started on this process, what is the best piece of advice you would give them?
I think that going back to that, the two groups theory, and quite honestly, this is one thing is you could actually go up to a teacher, and this might feel awkward. I don't know, do it, but like you're allowed to ask teachers, like, "Hey, if you do an LOR, will it be good?" And they might be like a little taken back by that. But you could say it's like I just want like good one. I'm trying to get into like if it's like
Yeah.
you can bring it up as like I really understand. It's like I know I just want to make students won't actually do it, but this does matter. And like honestly, you're trying to get into elite schools. It's like you're a senior, like it's kind of rude, but that's important. Is like a teacher being willing to be like, yeah, yes, or be like, you think that, yeah, do you think you'd be a good one to ask? And like, and you could be, it's like, if you think there's someone better, like that's totally fine. But I wanted to make sure that I'm like barking up the right tree because I always think about it
Mhm.
wasn't even like related to education. I was just at some other event that I met a guy and he was a Spanish teacher, and that conversation like chilled me to the bone because what you cannot if you aren't how about this? If you are not sure if a teacher is a quote unquote good pick, there's a lot of reservations. Ask them, talk to them about it, and they'll be
Mhm.
open with you. It's like, hey, I'm thinking, and you can bring those reservations. Like I'm considering picking. I don't know if we actually like got to talk that much about the work, right? And if they're like, yeah,
Okay,
you're totally
yeah.
right, then bail. If not, they'll be like, either they'll be like, yeah, you're kind of right. In which case, go try something else, or they will disagree. Like, no, actually, I was paying attention, and that's great. Use them. Or this might very well be an invitation for you to actually chat for like 20 or 30 minutes. And by the end of that, you can then alert them of all the stuff that you did there and they'll magically remember. Like those are the three possibilities. Yeah, just
Yeah.
sum it up as you can say it's like, I need these LORs. Like I have like I was considering you, and go talk to him. Like don't be a Gen Z and like text it to him. It's like go actually ask him. I'm considering you, but like my reservation is I don't know whatever that might be. It's like I don't know if we actually would spend enough time like you getting to see the project I was working on. I want to know if like you have any memories of it. Yeah, and then you're setting the scene for either to no, he probably doesn't want to do it, or it's not going to work, or it is yeah, like keep moving that way.
Well, that was a lot of
And
information
also
to
Michelle's gonna
unpack.
help you with all this.
Yes.
Michelle's gonna
Yeah. Email
I am now
me. Ugh.
25 minutes late for my next meeting. As like, can I go now? I'm really quite hungry. Michelle's gonna like, okay, bye. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye. That's how it ends. Thank you, Michelle. It was a pleasure. I am now taking on students for the 2025-26 college admission season. If you are a current junior who's looking for help specifically with their college application and essays, you should check out my website. It's collegewithmattie.com, and there you can see my services, my blog with other written posts, as well as book out a free consultation where you get a chance to chat with me and see how I might be able to help. Looking forward to meeting you.